Welcome, everybody, to Before the Commit, episode 25. This week is a News or Noise episode. Been so busy, couldn't even get to a tool of the week. But yeah, so we got a lot to cover. We'll just get right into it. So yeah, a little bit of a drama going on right now with the Department of War and Anthropic. I don't know if you've seen this, but yeah, just for those that are not kind of read into what's going on, uh, there was a request by the DOW to remove some of the guardrails to allow the models that are used for like Claude and Claude Code to be able to make some more militarily type decisions. And Anthropic essentially declined, to which President Trump uh, essentially called for a 6-month ban or so, or a 6-month period in which the tools would be sort of like grayed out or blacked out from being used for governmental purposes. Now, separately, Sam Altman jumped on the opportunity right away, and apparently that's been met with some backlash. There's been some other tea leaves there. So, for example, like you know, the Anthropic app in the App Store has jumped up, I suppose, in some kind of solidarity. You know, you and me were talking about this yesterday, but it appears like the adverse thing has happened to OpenAI. A group of Democrats have actually created a website called Quit GPT, and several people have canceled, like lots of people have canceled their ChatGPT accounts. I'll read something from this page, Quit GPT. Apparently, ChatGPT has been losing market share. So now today, apparently, um, uh, OpenAI is now reversing course because they're realizing that a lot of people are leaving in solidarity of the decision. So yeah, a little bit of drama. They are reversing their policy on no military weapons and only for defensive use. Yeah, so interesting stuff going on right now. Moral stuff, what's acceptable use. Does the government have, I don't want to get too political here, but does the government have the right to, do something like this? I suppose they do. They can decide not to buy something. They could say we don't want to use it, for sure. Yeah. So just curious what your thoughts are on this. It's a big topic.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's amateur hour. I mean, look at Google and look at XAI, how they don't get involved in this stuff. They're not trying to fight political battles or do any sort of, activist type stuff when it comes to the popular culture or politics. It's probably a smart move. I mean, they typically say don't get involved in politics if you're a business, otherwise you're going to lose half your audience. And it's funny because I feel like both OpenAI and Anthropic made, let's take the moral qualms out of the issue, but made silly mistakes because you'd expect OpenAI to do this and not Anthropic, because Anthropic is the enterprise play. So it makes no sense to eliminate the biggest enterprise, and I imagine that would probably flow through to other governments too, potentially. So they might lose even other enterprises around the world, governments. And then OpenAI, on the other hand, is sort of the consumer play. And they took the opposite tact and then rolled it back, which, I think that they're not as seasoned in their PR or in their public, or, in their public facing statements. And, and I was already on the podcast even before this happened. I was going to comment about some of the statements that Anthropic had made recently about, software engineering being over in 6 months or something like that. And I think they're just all flippant statements. There's a lot of very shoot from the hip stuff going on where it seems like Google and XAI are playing the methodical sort of behind the scenes, just stacking chips,
It's interesting. Like the society that we live in today is more so now than ever. Like people want to come off as soothsayers, beware the March. Like people want to make bold predictions. We live in a society of hot takes, and a lot of these leaders, whether it be any of the CEOs of these, major AI companies, they all do it. People are doing it on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has just become a lot of hot takes and, a lot of slop, so I think it's part of the culture that we have in the world right now is that people are trying to guess what's going to happen next and make bold predictions about things like jobs or things like data centers and space or things like that.
And, it's the issue here from a business perspective is who's going to want to align with these companies when they keep on tearing the carpet out from underneath their partners? I think Amazon put what is it, 4 million or 4 billion? I can't remember what the how many zeros there were, but they put quite a bit of money into Anthropic and pushed very, very hard for FedRAMP High and everything like that, and got them into sensitive networks and Bedrock. And then Anthropic goes and pulls this. You can't imagine that Amazon's very happy about this.
Well, I think to their point, they support defensive efforts. I think the issue is Pandora's box of using it for offensive purposes, and where they have drawn the line is okay, you can use it for analytics and training and intel processing, and things of that nature, but not to do autonomous targeting or things that are going to cause life to be lost, right? They don't want that sort of. I'm not saying I agree. I'm just stating the facts of where they're drawing the line.
Makes about as much sense to me. I mean, they end up being a utility at the end of the day, at least in my opinion. Makes about as much sense to me as an electric company trying to choose what you're going to use their electricity for. It's I feel like it's, and by the way, it's their right to do this. There's nothing illegal about what they're doing, and there's nothing immoral about what they're doing. I just think it's foolish business. If I were an investor in Anthropic, unless they told all the investors ahead of time that they were going to do this, but I really doubt they did, because otherwise Amazon probably wouldn't have chosen them to go into sensitive networks. But let's say they did, then okay, fine. But if they didn't, and you're an investor in Anthropic, I'd be really pissed off about someone, essentially putting their opinion into my investment. So, it is what it is, and maybe it'll help one of the businesses out or both of them because of their stance. But it's just seems like a poor business decision, especially considering that they're the two companies that I think are the least supported resource-wise, in terms of money, et cetera. I mean, you got to remember that these two companies are up against behemoths, and those behemoths right now aren't making a lot of PR. They aren't going out there and hyping themselves up every single day. And, I guess you could say Elon is hyping things up, but I don't think he can help himself. He just, let's just say he has a lot more experience doing hot takes and recovering from them. But it's just, I think that it comes off a little bit desperate, like the same way the advertising thing with OpenAI comes off. You know what I mean? You have
What part
Anthropic,
comes off desperate? Which part?
like they're constantly in the media trying to get exposure,
I see.
like a list celebrity, right?
Mhm.
You don't see Tom Cruise out there getting exposure every couple of days. It's because it's just a different level. And, this is obviously my hot take. So, I'm a little bit hypocritical, but, it's a podcast. I got to give my opinion. So it just seems foolish. it just seems like, couldn't they handle these things behind the scenes instead of fighting them in public?
Well, let me put it this way. Like, say they have a code of ethics, like that they decide is like, this is the line that we're drawing. And they have a CFO that runs the numbers and says like, okay, the amount of money that we'll lose from like aligning with something that's against our code of ethics will cause us to lose like this many dollars from current paying customers. And like at the end of the day, it's like a mathematical equation. You're going to lose customers here or you're going to lose customers here. And they just made a choice. Like, we're not going to go against what, because once Pandora's box is open, and like, mind you, China's probably and Iran are probably doing this already. Their moral compass may not be the same as, say, because, they have these companies are run by the government versus ours that are independent. They're not, they can compel these AI companies to do whatever they want to do. There's no really, the fact is that a company can reject something is part of, the society we live in. So anyway, my point is that, maybe this is just to them an economic choice. Like you're saying it's bad business, but in their mind, it might be good business. It might be like, we are not going to abandon. Like as a result of like them making this decision, the app went way up. And as a result of OpenAI making their decision, people are canceling their OpenAI subscriptions. Now, maybe that's a little reactionary. Does that play out in the long run? I mean, this is still not even a week old. So,
yeah, but it's an open question. How many of those people who left ChatGPT and went to Anthropic, which I assume is why people are downloading it, are going to convert into $100 a month accounts versus how many $100 a month accounts they lose when every single federal agency has to stop using it. We'll see. I mean, maybe it's a good economic decision, but what's funny is
how much is the government already using AI? I mean, like, so to that point, they're probably in the adoption phase right now, not in the like heavy usage phase.
Sure. But, but I imagine that probably most of the contractors are using it. And now they can't. So, so it's there's a long tail to this. It's not just like, and by the way, also, like, what if you're a private company who wants to sell products into the government? Do you have to worry about that?
No, that's that was the last thing I said was there's a little bit of a gut check that now has to happen. It's like, okay, am I going to be, well, like compelled to do something that I don't want to do in order to do business with the government, or B, make a choice not to do business with the government, depending upon what I'm selling, what I'm doing.
Yeah.
In governments in general, not just US government.
Yeah. And, there's also an argument of like, we're in a battle with China and other nations over controlling AI. And AI is probably going to be a multi-generational thing in terms of like, whoever is the best at AI is going to be the superpower for some time to come. And so, I think AI is an existential threat to every nation, in terms of what could happen if it falls into the wrong hands. And I think that therefore I kind of, in my own personal opinion, put it on the level of the Manhattan Project. And I think it's just awfully flippant for these folks. I'm glad Dario wasn't in charge of the Manhattan Project. Otherwise, we might all speak German right now. it's annoying to me a little bit. But it's the right to do it, and we'll see. Maybe it's a good economic decision for them. But you notice how the two companies who got to eat their cake and have it too are the two companies who kept their mouth shut and didn't make it into a huge political issue. So I think Anthropic kind of took a hit, and maybe it's not a hit. Maybe, like you said, it's going to end up being a good economic decision.
Well, I don't think this is the end of it. I mean, I think this is negotiations. I mean, this is how negotiations happen in the Trump administration. There's hard lines drawn, and concessions will be made on some sides, and ultimately, I believe there's something that can be done here to put these powerful models in the hands of warfighters, not just warfighters, but for other governmental purposes. This is not just about using it for war, but using it for other cost saving, save taxpayer dollars, and improve efficiencies, and reduce the labor costs, and better allocation of resources.
So hopefully that doesn't all get thrown out with the bathwater.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, as we talk about AI, and last week, we don't really talk about news that much here, but there's been I don't know if you call it a war, but there's some military activity going on in Iran right now, and there's a company called Windward that published a report called Maritime AI, and there's an unprecedented amount of GPS jamming going on right now in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And they use machine learning, behavioral analysis to detect anomalies in ship data that humans would likely miss. GPS jamming and spoofing are technical challenges that AI is uniquely equipped to solve. So I mean, it's just an example of why these models. I'm not saying that Anthropic would be used here or something like that, but you have a rapidly evolving landscape of battles being fought around the globe, and we see in Ukraine drone technology that probably would have taken years for us to see, given that the US is not maybe directly engaged in a ground war, but because we were funding the Ukrainian side of it, we got to see lots of advanced drone footage, and like a video game kind of stuff. And so, yeah, you're seeing the value of all of these applications, in whether you like it or not, the adversary is using these tools, and to be able to defend national security, these tools become a necessity, right? And you don't want to limit what you're using in order to have the best edge, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, AI is already being used in war. You don't have autonomous, machines per se, although maybe you do a little bit, because in Ukraine, they've been using AI for the last mile on some of their drones, because what happens is that once you get within a certain range of your target, you're often jammed. And so what that means for a drone is that you lose your GPS, you lose your connection back to home for whoever's steering it. And I think the way that some of these drones have been set up is that you can, when you have the target in sight, you can kind of tell it what the target is. And then if you lose connectivity, the AI will kind of steer it the final mile without any connectivity necessary, because it's just running on device. I think Anthropic, the news story that kind of kicked this off was, I think there was a Wall Street Journal article about how Anthropic was used in the Maduro raid when they went in there and grabbed Maduro. And I think that's what kind of kicked off the whole thing. And that's when Anthropic came out and tried to respond to that, and then it created a tit and tat with the government, and then OpenAI was like, hold my beer, and jumped in and got socked in the face. And it just goes back to, what I was saying is it's kind of like, play the long game.
Yeah. So, yeah, speaking of Anthropic, there's a new feature coming out.
Yeah, voice.
I still use Claude Code for everything, by the way. Yeah, I love it. I mean,
it's the best coding agent right now.
Yeah, I haven't used Codex or anything like that, but I use it for other things other than coding. I mean, I use it now for responding to RFIs. I use it for writing emails, because it's much better than a RAG database, right? Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I have my own project called Soulstone that I use, and I have, I use it for writing, posts on LinkedIn. It has access to all the the transcripts from the podcast. And so anyway, yeah, there's a new feature coming out. It's called Voice Assistant. It was released today to 5% of the customer base, which is how they typically roll features out. So it'll probably get incrementally rolled out to other users. It's a feature flag that'll get turned on. It essentially shows 30% faster prototyping. Voice mode transforms Claude Code from text-only conversational coding assistant, natural code. I mean, we talked about this in one of the episodes. Yeah, rolling out soon to Claude Pro and team users.
I'm interested to see how it works, because I've been a long time user of Whisperflow, which is great, honestly. And it just works, it's push to talk. There's other ways to use it, but it has its own dictionary that it curates on its own based on you correcting things. And by correcting, I mean, you push the button, you talk, you release the button, the text goes into the text box. If you go in there and delete any words and type another word, that's automatically updated in the dictionary. So I found it to be incredibly productive. And I've been saying for a long time, if you're using AI and you're not using speech to text, then you're losing about half your productivity. It just really, and I've also talked about rambling prompts, like the idea that like when you type, you tend to make your prompt very concise. And when you talk, you tend to have a conversation, and you end up having a big block of text. Some of it is certainly rambling, but the results are so much better because the AI looks at your natural language and gets a better understanding of what you truly want and threads the needle a little bit better.
No, yeah, I agree. I think that when you are typing, you tend to think, you spend a lot of your time thinking. And part of the process of talking to the model or to Claude Code or whatever you're talking to is you actually gain clarity as you start talking. Whereas you don't need to you're not waiting to gain that clarity. As you talk, you gain self-clarity, versus when you type, you're thinking and you may not gain the clarity more naturally. You're trying to craft sentences and just typing is slower than speaking, So yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly.
And you find yourself doing a lot of things like, let's create a new repo called this, and then we're going to do this. And then you go delete, 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 delete. Oh, actually, let's make the repo this. Whereas when you talk, you're like, let's call the repo this, and then we're going to work on this. And oh, by the way, actually, let's not call the repo that. Let's call it this. And you just move on. You just keep on flowing. And it's a much better way, in my opinion, to do things. I found it to be highly effective. And this isn't just like a hot take from 15 seconds using a product. I've been using it since,
Yeah. By the way, we covered this in episode 12. If anybody wants to go back and listen,
it's been a while.
It's almost that was back in October. It's which is a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
So another interesting tidbit. I mean, this is right in our wheelhouse. So apparently, enterprises are starting to ban AI browsers.
Mm.
Um, those such as the Atlas, which is the ChatGPT one, Perplexity, which is now like an aggregator like Open Router, and there's other ones like there's I mean some of this you can't ban because, for example, like Chrome has Ask Gemini built in, but yeah, so they are essentially they're trying to curb shadow AI by banning browsers, but it's backfiring because what's happening is that enterprises are setting up like AI speakeasies. They call them like underground like places where employees kind of like, hey guys, come over here, like come in the back. And it's like these underground areas like VPNs, personal devices, like back doors where they can use AI that's not allowed by the enterprise. And so essentially, by banning the tools, they are reducing productivity. And yeah, bans that, trying to, reduce prompt injection attacks and data exfiltration. And of course, the unintended consequences of doing that, eroding oversight and increasing breach exposure. Surveys show that 70% of workers bypass bans and productivity drops 20 to 40% without AI aids.
Yeah.
Enterprise grade AI gateways with data loss prevention over outright prohibitions. And the policy shift is needed to focus on AI hygiene, training, and approved tools to avoid the speakeasy culture.
Yeah. It's a microcosm of what happened in the engineering market already.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel bad for the other industries because they're a little bit behind where software engineering is in terms of AI. So their tools don't have, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure you can't take Cowork and pipe it through an AI gateway or something like that. Whereas like most of the engineering tools that have to do with AI have the opportunity for you to secure it. So instead of it just getting shut down, you can put in an AI gateway and have guardrails and all kinds of visibility into what's going on. But for some of these things like the AI browsers and Cowork and other things, I don't think there's a possibility of you doing that. So the organizations have to make a choice between security or using the product at all. And, a lot of them are choosing security. And I think that's a shame because if they had the ability for these guardrails to be in front of it, maybe they would not be banned.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to like giving people the best tools, but monitoring the behavior, like not banning the tools. And like, I mean, I get the idea behind banning a browser, um, but you still need to give people the best tools. Like, it makes sense why, there's a lot of issues with Atlas anyway. Like, it has a number of vulnerabilities because of some of the zero click, like prompt injection stuff, the way it scrapes. Um, they're not great, but yeah, I mean, like give them something that is useful, um, so that it provides the same quality of experience, but without sacrificing security. And then they'll use those things and not create these backdoors.
Yeah. And if this was just an incremental productivity increase from like a tech utility or app or something like that, then it would be so cut and dry for businesses. You just ban it until it's secure. It's
Mhm.
only, an incremental improvement. But the problem with AI is it's tantamount to magic. It's like a whole new generation of something. And then you're forced into this situation of like, do I use the Xbox or go back to the Nintendo? You know, and there's just such a radical difference in productivity between one and the other that
Mhm.
you find yourself in a position where you have to make a choice between security or the velocity of your business against competitors.
Yeah.
And that's something that has to be solved.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of opportunity for this sort of enterprise governance, if you will.
Yeah, you'll be you could either end up being the one ahead of all your competitors but the least secure, or you could end up being the most secure but last in market share.
Well,
Um,
you can be both. I
yeah,
mean, that's where the opportunity is where you can be moving fast, but also be doing it securely, right?
the problem though is there's not a lot of education out there about how to do that.
Yeah,
So a lot of these middle managers or CEOs are kind of out of their element, and they're looking
sure.
for
Yeah,
folks out there to help them understand how to secure it, have their cake and eat it too.
well, yeah. I mean, I think that's a lot of the sort of the backdrop of AI is like when you don't understand something, you just ban it, instead
Mhm.
of trying to figure it out. And I think that's a somewhat healthy reaction to it. You're not just going to, especially if you're in a highly regulated environment, you're not just going to want to like open yourself up to legal liability. But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity in educating and providing the safe kind of channel for people to use this stuff, like coming up with an AI, acceptable use policy and providing the proper tooling and governance around the tooling. Yeah, that's where the opportunity really is.
And also training, like
Yeah,
folks need
yeah,
to understand how to use these things safely.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
has
Sure.
anybody had any training from any of their employers about AI? it's,
Possibly. I mean, I don't think there's probably less than there are
I
that
would say
have.
probably like less than 5% of businesses are doing that at this point. Other than,
Yeah,
the talk being don't use it.
yeah, yeah. So what else? Interesting. We've talked a lot about on this podcast. Oh, way back in like who knows, episode 2 or 3. We talked about
Jeez.
creative works as it relates to copyrights.
Mhm.
And so there was a case that opened up, Thaler versus Perlmutter. And they actually, this was yesterday. U.S. Copyright Office rules AI assisted works lack human authorship protection unless significant creative input is proven. In Thaler versus Perlmutter, courts upheld no copyright for fully AI generated art, emphasizing human spark requirement amid rising AI content blurs. The core ruling is that AI outputs ineligible for copyright without minimal human creativity. Example, prompts alone are insufficient. Implications for creators, prompts and minor edits may qualify, full automation does not. Shifts the burden to prove human involvement. Industry appetite challenges AI art tool market, encourages hybrid workflows to secure intellectual property. Uh, yeah, so I mean, it's not quite what we talked about, but it's interesting in that, like, for example, like music, right? You're seeing a rise of music and movies and things of that nature, and like, what is the amount of if this is like a formula, right? What is the amount of human element that needs to be included in order to copyright your creative works if you're using AI? For example, we've talked about umpteen things. You can go back and listen to episode 2 or 3. I don't remember which one it was, but movies and art and music and so on.
Yeah, I'll have to read into this a little bit deeper, but I think what they're trying to guard against is I think early on in generative AI there was folks out there trying to generate everything so that they could have a copyright on like so many different things. And obviously there needs to be some sort of limitation to, like, if I just set my computer up to generate images from now into eternity as fast as possible, do I own like copyrights on like ridiculous amount of stuff? So I get that. But on the other hand, when they say prompts aren't enough, it's like, well, what do you mean? You got to train your own neural network in order to copyright something that comes out of it. Uh, Like, does that mean that any piece of
I mean,
software that's written can't be copywritten because you use prompts? I mean, I think this is going to break down pretty quickly if that's the litmus test, because in a short period of time, everything is just going to be prompting all the time, in every industry. So it's a step in the step in the right direction. But I feel like, probably this year, there's going to be blockbuster movies coming out that are completely generated through prompts. And to say that that's not copywritten, even though they worked on it for hundreds of hours and did it all the, producing, etc., is interesting. But I'll have to read the details because maybe they did thread the needle properly.
so just something from this, the artist provided highly specific prompts to select the color, style, and era of the artwork and arrange the elements in the image to represent women dressed in Victorian dresses performing opera on a stage, and further prompted the AI to depict each performer as wearing a space helmet. Allen also used prompts to modify the image to include a theater stage, an audience, and a window with a view of the outer world. Despite the artist's undisputed contribution in the form of carefully crafted prompts, image selection, and modification, the Copyright Office denied registration, holding the artist had no control over how the artificial intelligence tool analyzed, interpreted, or responded to these prompts, nor did he exercise any control over the actual creation, development, or execution of the image that Midjourney, which is the tool that is used, rendered on his screen.
Yeah, but I can go on YouTube and find a whole bunch of people putting paint in some sort of swing and throwing it around the room. It's like people have been creating.
I know what you're
random art
talking about.
forever.
I've seen those videos.
It's like people have been creating random art for a long time. You know what I mean? Like, if you, I don't know. It's like, I guess it's something that lawyers will have to figure out where the right way to thread the needle on. But I think it's going to be.
Well, this is case law now. I mean, this is copyrighted case law. So, I mean, he wrote it. This guy, Jason Allen, was he generated an image for a graphic novel, and he tried to register the image and was denied. And so hired a law firm, went to court and lost. And now there's case law. Yeah.
What if you generated an image with AI and then you paid someone to make the image exactly as it is? What would be the case law at that point? Like, I mean, I'm trying to.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. Yeah.
It's like there's going to be a whole pop-up of industries of send us your AI graphic and we'll copy it and send it back to you. And then now it's copywritten or something. I don't know. I mean, I do think there needs to be some kind of intent, like I think if you're taking the image and copywriting it, like the idea, like if I write a book, it's automatically copywritten because I wrote it. I don't think you have to file a copyright on it. I'm out of my depth a little bit, but maybe for AI work, you should have to file it instead of just like in the background, your agent is just creating millions of artwork and then somehow that's all copywritten. It's an interesting question. And I don't fault, them for trying to do this, because I think it does need to be done. And I don't have the answer for how it should be done, but I can find some loopholes in what you described at least,
Yeah. Yeah. It's different for a book. Like books become like automatically copywritten when you kind of make it when it exists. So, again, like now part of copyrights are in at least in books is that if somebody tries to take your book and reproduce it. If you don't defend your copyright, you lose it. It becomes public, what's the word? Public domain.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, copyrights are only valuable if you can actually defend them. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's a fair example. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not certain. I mean, I get the part about, I'm not sure how the case was defended on the other side, or what they used. It's kind of like when people were kind of asking Facebook about their privacy, like, and like their privacy laws, and like sometimes the people that are asking the questions don't understand the technology. But given the probabilistic nature of how LLMs work, it's entirely possible that the same set of prompts could yield the same image. Now, it's not likely, but it's possible.
Well,
so is it creative?
If I own like a art company, right? And one of my employees makes art that I didn't ask them to make, I still own the copyright.
You own it, right? Yeah. As long as you have works for hire in the employment agreement.
Yeah, as long as they're under, they were working.
Yeah. It depends. It depends, but yeah, typically, yeah, that might be in their employment agreement.
So I would argue, like, what's the difference, right? Like, is the essential difference that somehow it was transferred to me because a human did it versus if an AI did it,
Yeah, I think their point is not about ownership. I think the point is about.
Well, I mean, be copywritten too.
Well, no, I think the point is about creativity, and that if you use an AI model, I'm not saying yes or no, but if you use an AI model and you just craft a bunch of prompts, that is not enough creativity to qualify for a copyright of an image, right? Or whatever else. I guess it's an image in this case, but
what if your prompt is as long as a book?
They're saying that
what if I write a book and put it into a prompt?
But it was a series of prompts. We don't know how long it was. We don't have the exact prompts that were created, but perhaps it's not enough. Maybe part of it is that you need to have included something as part of the creative process, meaning like an image to start out with that was partly created by you.
And what if it was like an iterative approach? Like, what if I generated an image and then I prompted again and say, hey, change that to that. And then
I think that's what he did. That's what he did. Yeah. I think, yeah, I don't know. I agree with that entirely. Yeah, that's so yeah.
The slippery slope.
Yeah, I mean, I think the slippery slope is all this other type of mediums that are also impacted by this. AI assisted creations, like creative works beyond, everything, poetry, literature, whatever have you. Now, like if you have a podcast and you have unique content and you go and generate content from your unique content, to me, that would qualify as a copyright. But if you're just using a model and you are not providing any unique inputs that are human generated or human created, then I can see that perhaps maybe you should have added something that was unique about you as a person. But just using the model alone with a bunch of prompts is that they're saying is not creativity. It's not creative enough.
So. Like, I feel like you have to break it down to a principle. What they're saying is that AI is black box. When you put something in it, you're getting something random out, so it shouldn't be copywritten. Okay, well, if I made a physical black box that I pour paint in and I can't determine where the paint's going to go, they would copyright that, right? So it's like, I feel like the principle needs to stand, It kind of just rubs off as like, we don't like AI, and therefore we're going to treat it different, or maybe we don't
Or
understand AI.
we don't understand it is where I was
Mhm.
going. We don't understand that it's a mathematical equation that is probabilistic, and
Mhm.
the part of the prompt set process and the creativity behind it should be sufficient enough. Or maybe they
Mhm.
just feel like there's going to be too many requests to the trademark office and we can't keep up with it. And so
I
we
think
need to put barriers around, guardrails
mhm,
around it.
that makes sense.
Mhm. So, what else? There's two other things to talk about. One is this concept of SLMs. We've talked about it briefly. We never actually did a deep dive in it, but I've been meaning to talk about this for a while. So,
Mhm.
essentially, what is an SLM? An SLM is essentially a model with less than 10 billion parameters. So, typically, they are used for things that you need highly efficient. And maybe this is a concept that doesn't exist, when compute prices go down more. But essentially, things like mobile, edge devices, where you need speed and privacy, you need things air gapped. So you have the Google model, which is Gemma. You also have Llama. So the advantage of a small language model is that it could run on a phone or a laptop. I mean, I have air gap models that run on my phone. I have
Mhm.
an iPad Pro with a M4, and I could run like pretty heavyweight, SLMs on there without an internet connection.
Mhm.
Anyway, where it gets interesting is how some organizations are using these SLMs. What they're doing is they're taking some of these models and then they are giving them very unique personas. And then they're creating a network or kind of a distributed uh, ecosystem of these highly specialized SLMs. And they train them using RAG, or they're fine tuning them to specific purposes, and then delegating tasks to these models that are designed for specific purposes and getting better results because these big models that we use every day for coding, they're more general
Mhm.
models, not
Yeah.
specific models.
So you fine tune a small model to be specifically what you need, kind of like a function for
Yeah,
a
it could be
specific
like
task.
for smart devices, for home automation.
Mhm.
It could be for a specific chat bot that's doing something very very specific, and you might get better results by using an SLM over an LLM.
Yeah. Trying to think of the best, like what would be a use case for that. You know, I want, like, I understand like smaller models when it comes to
Edge.
things outside of language, right?
Mhm.
Like, I made a
Uh,
model that plays a game for me just
mhm,
because I was, investigating, you know, training models and things like that. And I trained a model that plays a game, and that's certainly much less than 10 billion parameters.
mhm.
Um, but like, where would you want a little language, but not a lot? Um, and
I mean, part of it could be from a security perspective. Like you may actually, for example, like a chatbot that you don't want to have a large blast radius. You
mhm,
might choose to use an SLM that's fine tuned, that you limit its sort of blast radius. Um, Essentially, you start micro segmenting your network, your cluster of um, models that can respond to various different actions by microsegmenting behavior out of something that may be more permissive, or more
mhm.
parameters, more attack surface, the
I
larger
could see it.
context window.
I could see it being on a small device that does like some sort of home automation, like where you're limited. It's essentially like a language model in front of an API. So there's just a limited amount of things you can do. Like instead of me having to say, Alexa, turn on bedroom lights, right? I could just say, hey, it's dark in the bedroom, and it would understand what I meant and
Mhm.
still fulfill the API. So yeah, I guess I could see how it would be very useful for IoT.
And you
To
see
give
it for voice. You see it for voice applications. Like if you're using an air gapped model on like WhisperFlow or Mac Whisper, like you could use an offline model. You don't need a large language model for refining your dialogue before it gets sent to a larger model. So essentially, if you think about like
cleaning up, taking out the
you're
and
cleaning
like
up conversation before you send it to another model. So essentially, you use an SLM probably without even realizing it in your conversation.
like little adapter models.
You don't need to send that huge prompt out to Opus to be cleaned up. It's a waste of tokens. The latency is high on it. You need something local and very specialized.
Yeah, makes sense.
So I think mostly this was about inspiring you to take a look at SLMs. It wasn't to like,
Thanks.
it was just to put it on your radar because I've been wanting to talk about it amongst other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems interesting. It seems like an interesting tool that can be used in the tool belt of like, like I think of, the way that some of these security problems are solved. I mean, as like it's a multi-pronged approach. And I'm curious as to maybe how SLMs play a role in possibly doing guardrails, doing sanitization of data before it gets sent out to a larger model,
That's very true.
And some of these specialized models could be used, in a variety of creative ways.
Yeah, like a good example is like these, like you're saying, the guardrails that are using natural language, like don't talk about legal things or don't talk about medical things, don't give medical advice, don't give financial advice. Like when you see guardrails in LLMs, it makes you think like, man, that's got to be a fast model because you could have tons of traffic coming through here and it's going to check each thing,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple things, for those that are listening, there's a couple things on our radar. We're going to talk about SLMs at some point. We're going to talk about ACP, Agentic Context Protocol, which is heavily, it's something that we're seeing more of. It's certainly something available in OpenClaw. And I don't know, there's some other things that we're going to look at. What was the thing that anti-gravity, which is the Google IDE for coding. So yeah, and of course we're seeing some chatter from Elon Musk about their CLI for coding, which I expect to drop very soon. I mean, I think there's a lot of catalysts right now in the world that would make the timing of it dropping like in a week or two very timely, given all the stuff going on with Codex and Claude Code.
Yeah, the XAI team has to put that in a Wiggum loop and get it out.
I mean, they're using it now, so I suspect. Yeah, of course. I mean, they're not using
also because Anthropic shut them down, so it's like that's I think the catalyst that got them to start.
They also said we're not going to use it, and so they are, Elon said we're not going to use any tools, so that forces you. It's like being in a hole. Like you're going to crawl your way out somehow. You're not just going to stay down there without food and water. It's going to force you to build something very quickly. Like a speakeasy, an AI speakeasy. So yeah, before we shut it down, I mean, I think this is something that we've talked a lot about. I purposefully did not grab your signal messages that you've sent because there's like a little bit of like a kind of competing world going on right now about jobs being lost and jobs being gained. And like, I don't really want to kind of sit in that argument right now because I don't think anybody's right. I think that there's a repositioning of the job market, a special software engineers versus developers, and like the need for people who are skilled with AI that can go and in this world that we live in right now where you can rapidly develop software. So anyway, we've talked quite a bit about vertical integration. Andreessen Horowitz put out an article they make a prediction. I mean, they have lots of investments in SaaS companies, so it makes sense why they would analyze their portfolio of companies and start to make predictions. But they predict that AI agents will disrupt $500 billion plus of the software market by 2030. I think it's more than that, by replacing apps with autonomous AI employees that handle end-to-end tasks like CRM, HR, etc. And a shift from SaaS to agentic AI promises 10x efficiency, but demands new dev paradigms. Their thesis says that AI eats apps by automating workflows holistically, not just assisting. AI sales reps closing deals. And that this AI market is ripe for cannibalization. Early dev wins are ready, multimodal models and cheap compute and reliable agents, and that you can essentially, kill off things like, I don't want to name specific companies, but, people that have been basically riding the ARR marketplace, with, features and upsells. And, we've actually, I've replaced a CRM that I used with a homegrown tool in about 2 hours that, saved me, $1,000 a year, simple things like that with a, a $200 Claude Code Max 10X account, which I use for other things. So, but yeah, they're saying, there's other challenges like reliability and data moats and other things like, large entrenchment of customers. But
yeah, from time to time, I think about like when AI is doing things like a true assistant, right? Where you can just hand it things to do and it's actually doing it. Like do my taxes, close these sales, go make cold calls, what actually has staying power? Like what exists? Like, I don't even think websites are really a thing anymore. Because if you think about it, why do you go to a website? Right? It's because you're trying to do research, or
because of your eyes.
Because of your
eyes. Yeah. If you don't need your eyes to browse the web, like to get information, then there's no need for HTML. Like,
but usually you're like you're saying, you're using your eyes to like browse and do research, learn something about I'm going to go to this company's website to see what they're about, see what their pricing is, see what their contact information is. I got to go to this website to figure out what their address is because I got to go to the doctor's appointment, or I got to go log into my portal to go check what my balance is, or I got to go fill out this form, or I got to, sign up for a new account. Like, are you really going to do that anymore when the AI can do it for you? You're going to have it go research for you. You're going to have it go make the appointment for you. You're going to have it go find the address. You're going to have it go do whatever,
You access the internet primarily through one sense. I mean, yeah, sure, you could listen, but primarily HTML and JavaScript are related to this using the sense of eyes. If you have no need to observe what's going on, then, and you don't need to open a web browser, then web pages are dead. If everything is done through, verbal communication and audio communication, sure, maybe you're reading the response back from your bot, but there's no need for you to consume information through a web browser. So yeah, I agree that websites are, it's part of the reason why ChatGPT is putting ads, is because the idea behind an impression market that is based off of, maybe what still exists is like social media, like in the form of reels, because it's entertainment, and there's an influencer market and things like that. But I agree with you. I don't know that the internet, the way we know it, exists, in 5 years. I know. I
Yeah,
think it's
specifically web pages. I think
yeah,
the web will still exist, but I think it'll be
yeah,
primarily for agents to find
yeah.
information.
APIs, MCPs, like the protocol of the internet will still exist, but the web page concept will probably not. And
Yeah, and
maybe in some cases it does, but
the
the
idea that
legacy
someone
stuff.
would come there and read your website that's not an AI will be a smaller and smaller thing every year until probably it disappears at some point.
So I
Um,
think, yeah, so I think that the companies that kind of make it out of this are the plumbing companies of the internet, like those that have done the legwork to create APIs that have moats that like are hard to break through.
and the
Like,
actual plumbing companies.
well, yeah. But yeah, I mean, like companies like I think a good example is like PayPal or Stripe, you know,
Mhm.
or Square, you know, companies that have gone through the heavy lifting, like things that you like authentication, you know, like these are not like things that you would normally go and build because they're highly complicated. They have lots of confusing protocols, you know, standards, you know, some of them have regulatory challenges around them, like PCI DSS and so on and so forth. And then these other companies that are just web pages, you know, which I'm not going to call out by name. I think that they have a hard time finding a foothold in a world where, you know, honestly, like you wind up shoehorning yourself into them and never being fully satisfied. Whereas you
I
can
don't know.
just build agents that automate your business.
I just think I think even the PayPals of the world are in trouble because
Really?
I think everybody's in trouble. I don't think there's any safe spot anymore because what took you some amount of time to build is now a fraction of the amount of time for someone to follow you.
Mm.
And even if you're the leader and you do something first, everyone can fast follow immediately. There used to be some
Well,
period of time where you could exploit being first,
well,
but
I
like
would
now
just say
everyone can follow along in a weekend, you know?
I'm not saying that they're safe. I'm not saying that they are
They have more of a moat.
protected. I'm just saying
Mhm.
if you are trying to automate your business, there's certain parts of it that you can automate away. But then there's
Mhm.
other parts like highly regulated things that you would probably say, yeah, that's a lot of work. I'm probably not going to do that.
Yeah.
Or you might say like, hey, like the margins are going to be better if we do this and go get whatever regular, you know, getting PCI
Mhm.
DSS certified is, you know, not, you know, it's not like, you know, you open Claude Code and you have it. You have to go through a formal attestation and, you know, security, you know, audits and things of that nature, like a FedRAMP. You're not just going to get it because you code it.
But the crazy part is that eventually you will. You will just get a
Possibly.
FedRAMP because you'll tell the agent to go get a FedRAMP. Um,
I hope
like that's
so.
where we're going. Like that's where
I
it's
hope,
going.
yeah, I hope so. I hope it's like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think that like, and I've heard arguments, and I happen to tend to believe this that software may become ephemeral to the sense that like it will be made on the fly when you need it. Kind of like
I
the
mean,
difference between, like going to a restaurant, and they just make what you want when you need it. Um, except for you'll be able to ask for anything you want. Um, I think that companies are going to start vertically integrating where their dependencies are going to be more rare than they are right now. It's like everything is a dependency, right? Like you've got thousands of dependencies and thousands of, you know, integrations and stuff like that. In the future, it might be like a lot less. You may have companies where their entire stack is built in house. There's not a single dependency. I think that's where it's going over time.
I will not disagree with you. I think you're
Oh,
spot
thanks.
on. Yeah.
Cue the music.
Oh yeah. Yeah, cue the music.
There was
So,
new
yeah.
music in the beginning.
Oh yeah, I had a little heartbeat to throw
You had
you
a
off a little
heartbeat.
bit. Yeah. So anyway, next week we'll be talking about something. What are we gonna talk about next week?
Well, we have the SLMs I'll look into, and anti-gravity, and then the ACP. Yeah.
It'll actually be 2 weeks. We'll be back. Yeah, next week we'll be off. Thanks everybody for joining. Take care.
Take care.